Anyway, that being said, that is Usyk's fights at heavyweight, right? So impressive in some of them. Last one controversial. The AJ fight pretty competitive, and that's that, right? Now we look at Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury, on the other hand, he will go with his fights ever since he like beat Klitschko. After that, because that's when he made his like huge comeback from depression or whatever, right? So anyway, Tyson Fury, he beats Francisco Pineda and Sefer Safiri. I'm not going to talk about those fights because it literally has no impact on this Usyk and Fury fight, right? But that being said, he was still able to beat those guys. It was kind of just one of those whatever fights once again. There were like one of those fights they were even just showboating to each other and not a whole lot was happening, right? So, it was just one of those things. But anyway, that being said though, after that he fought Deontay Wilder, and he was able to beat Wilder. He wasn't able to beat Wilder. He had a draw against Wilder. It was a lot of people thought Fury was robbed in that fight. I honestly thought that it was I didn't really care who would have won that fight, just because at the time I wanted Wilder to win just because I had money on him at the time, but other than that, I wasn't impressed by either guy too much, just because Fury was running around a lot, right? So he wasn't being super dominant, and then Wilder was trying to be aggressive, but that's not his style really. He's used to just looking for that right hand and landing it, so it was kind of just one of these awkward fights, two awkward styles, and that was that. And it ended up being a draw, so I was like, yeah, I think that's a fair decision. Maybe one of the guys deserved to win, who knows, right? But or landed more punches or whatever, but it didn't really matter to me because I thought it was, neither fighter was dominating the other, So I thought Wilder's big shots and knockdowns out, sort of balanced out Fury's accumulation of punches or shots and stuff. But either way, it is what it is, or it was what it was, I should say. Anyway, that being said, before they have a rematch, Tyson Fury goes and fights Tom Schwartz. Again, one of these whatever fights. We all knew what was going to happen in that fight. Then he fights Otto Wallen, goes life and death with Otto Wallen, in that fight where he gets a cut above his eye, and it's, it was a very, some people say it was a cherry pick gone wrong. Honestly, it could be the case, right? But then he fights Wilder in the rematch. He's a controversial fight just because of the whole Glovegate thing, but aside from that, Fury goes out there and just beats Wilder convincingly. And then they have a third fight, it's a year or 2 years later, it was a year later, sorry. And then Wilder is able to make it relatively competitive. It was actually a really good fight, that third one, because you had Fury knocking down Wilder knocking down Fury, and it was just a back and forth brawl, just war, right? But Wilder ended up, Fury ended up knocking out Wilder, and he was declared the winner. So that was that. And then after that, Fury, so at that point, that was Fury's peak moment, if you will. That was his, Muhammad Ali versus Joe Frazier 3 kind of moment, if you will. That's that was the peak of Fury's career, was him beating, well, so far anyway, was him beating Deontay Wilder the third time. Anyway, then he goes ahead and fights Dillian White, stops Dillian White with that signature uppercut, all that stuff, and then he goes and fights Derek Chisora, which, look, honestly, I didn't watch that fight. I really just didn't care about it. I was I really just didn't care about that fight because I thought, did anyone really care about that fight? It was the third time they fought, right? Chisora he had a split decision win. He was coming off a split decision win against Pulev. But before that, he was losing to Joseph Parker twice, as well as Dillian White and and Usyk as well, So it was does this really matter, this fight? But anyway, it ended up happening. Fury stops Chisora in the 10th, I think it was, or something like that. Pretty expected. After that, Fury, he goes on to fight Francis Ngannou, which was a cherry pick gone wrong, is what a lot of people were saying. Which honestly, again, could be the case, because Ngannou ended up knocking down Fury, right? and rocking him a bunch of times in that fight. And a lot of people thought Ngannou should have won. Now, I think from what I've seen from people who've actually like analyzed the fight, like, you know, round by round, it does seem like Fury just edged it. But either way, it was still like some people could make an argument that Ngannou could have like edged it as well, right? So it's either way, like going against a guy who's never had a professional boxing fight on his record before and getting dropped, and you know, going into like a split decision, was it, or whatever, you know, like that's not the most impressive thing. So either way, that was Fury's last win, and yeah, that was in terms of Fury's career, right? So either way, both guys, they've had impressive wins. I think right now the consensus is that Usyk's looked a bit more impressive just because of what he's done to AJ, Dubois, and so many other guys. And you can make the case for that, because what Usyk did to AJ, like, no one's ever done that before. No one's ever like gone and just like tried to outbox, or has gone and outboxed AJ like Usyk did, right? Even though I said those fights were close, like Usyk did dominate AJ in a couple of rounds, or quite a lot of rounds in those two fights, right? And, you know, no one's done that to AJ. Charles Martin didn't, Dylan White didn't, you know what I mean? Povetkin didn't. Klitschko did at times, but it was more that AJ just was gassing out in that fight and just got caught by like a few big shots by Klitschko and stuff like that. You know what I mean? But even Ruiz, even though he lost to Ruiz, it wasn't like Ruiz just landed a punch from the gods, as AJ would say, right? Or whatever, you know, he basically landed like just a pitch perfect punch on the night, or a lucky punch against Joshua, and he was able to knock AJ down, and he was able to win by a stoppage, right? But I mean, it showed that was like the best punch Ruiz could have landed on the night, because in the rematch, AJ just went ahead and completely schooled Andy Ruiz Jr. You know what I mean? It just showed that he just went out there and like he schooled him like for 12 rounds and stuff, right? So it was like, you know, it showed that it was one of these fights where AJ just got caught in the night, and that was it, really. You know, I mean, there were talks of AJ like being nervous before the fight or whatever, but either way, I think AJ answered a lot of questions in that rematch. So that was that. But the point is that, like, what I'm getting at is that Usyk, like, what he did against AJ is not like what any other fighter on AJ's record has done against AJ, because AJ's got a pretty good record, you know, him versus Klitschko, you know, Povetkin, White, you know, Pulev, even Ruiz, right? You know what I mean? Even like, Parker as well, right? And you know, most notably Ngannou is, you know, because I mean, if people are saying that Ngannou's this great fighter for beating Fury, I mean, that is a great win for Joshua, to go out there and stop Ngannou within like 2 rounds and stuff, you know. You know, I mean, I don't want to like going on Ngannou like in this video or anything, because obviously recently he's been going through a tough time. So yeah, I mean, I feel, you know, pretty bad for the guy. You know, I feel kind of bad for the guy, but you know, just because of what happened. So yeah, I feel pretty bad for the guy. But it's like, you know, either way, it's But aside from that, I'll just put it as like AJ went ahead and like knocked out a guy in 2 rounds. You know, the same guy who Fury like barely beat, right? So that's kind of how it is. So yeah, Usyk has been looking impressive, but I mean, Fury did look impressive in those Wilder fights, as well as like you know, even the White fight to an extent. So that was that.